Welcome everyone to the afternoon session. As Chris said, Kathy Giusti is one of those patient advocates who's changing the world as we know it. So what role did your 2 decades in pharma and being a business executive play in your starting the foundation and frankly being a patient who wouldn't take no for an answer?
Well, I think the fact that I'd never worked in a nonprofit helped me because I actually only knew how to run a business. So having come from the pharmaceutical industry, my goal was always make sure we got new products to market quickly, make sure we measured everybody by their results, and make sure we ran anything I was starting like a Fortune 100 company. So when I started the MMRF, that's really what I ended up doing was I really started a virtual biotech. It doesn't look anything like a patient advocacy group. So reporting into the CEO of the MMRF is, a team that only does CROs and clinical trials, a team that's all PhDs and scientists, a team that's Masters of Public Health to do the educational piece, and now, of course, we have to build out a whole technology team, and then the fundraising. I think the beauty of being a patient and a businesswoman was, as a patient, I looked at everything with a specific lens, right? So if I was doing a bone marrow biopsy on a Friday night, and I came out of the exam room and I found 3 researchers with an igloo cooler waiting for my myeloma cells, it would hit me, wow, tissue is incredibly precious. I can't believe these guys are making sure these cells stay viable through their Friday night. And that allowed me to then say, well, how do I work with the scientists in the field to solve the business problem? So I would sit down with, fortunately, a very small myeloma community at the time, primarily Ken Anderson at Dana-Farber. There was Keith Stewart at Princess Margaret, Bill Dalton at Moffitt. These men have actually done incredibly well business-wise. It's interesting. But we all started together, and they looked at everything like, we can't get the basic biology of this disease, and I would look at it as a patient and a businesswoman and say, well, why can't you get tissue? And then as soon as we would identify the problem together, I would come up with the business solution, and they would help with the science. We like to be the group that convenes and says, what are the questions that we need to answer for the patients we serve?
So as a businesswoman, how do you define results in this arena?
So I define results as how many drugs have we gotten approved?
Would you give yourself an A with regard to that?
I would give the community, all of us, an A together, absolutely. I would look at 5-year survival, which, it was in the 20s when I was diagnosed, and now it's up in the 40s, and I think that's pretty impressive. And I would say tripling of the lifespan is amazing. But I will tell you, there is no room at all for complacency. The disease is still fatal. 25% of our patients either don't respond or relapse in 1 year. And I think the beauty of data is how do you identify those patients, those high-risk patients, unmet medical need, and how do we all work together, academia, community, payers, everybody, to say, and pharma, say, how do we find those drugs? How do we find those combinations? Everybody's talked about the last day or two, and it's important.
So what are the roles of the democratization of DNA, as I call it, and data sharing?
So the way we looked at this, and I think this was important, I was frustrated that everybody had their own data set. And so what we decided to do in myeloma, remember, this is a disease, fatal, but very uncommon, and highly, highly heterogeneous. So if you want to find the subtypes, you really do need a lot of tissue and a lot of data. So we decided to launch a study called COMPASS. The COMPASS study takes 1,000 patients. We worked with 75 centers to do this. And we take their bone marrows at diagnosis before they have ever started treatment. And then we do DNA.
Can you just underscore how important that is?
Yeah.
Because in so many diseases, people go out and get a first treatment, and then they start collecting scans. Yeah. It's talking about a baseline.
Yeah, and it's hard. This is why when everybody says we're going to go collect data from patients, you have to understand that a patient is really nervous at that point in time. They've just been diagnosed with this disease, and now you're saying to them, we may need an extra bone marrow. We want to get you into this COMPASS study. And they don't yet know the importance of their tissue and their data in finding a cure for their own disease. I think that's one of the most important things that foundations like ours can do is help researchers by letting patients know you are part of the solution. What we do is we bring people together and we ask the tough questions. Like, why can't you share? What is stopping you from sharing? If I have this question to ask, that we found a new mutation in the COMPASS study and we really need to validate it, and I know you have data, Ken Anderson at Dana-Farber, and you have it, Nooper at Mass General, what are we going to do about this? If nothing else, can we develop a federated model and start answering the questions for the patients? But we bring people together and we ask them, and we bring the attorneys together and we solve for it. And all of this is now science and business and technology, and they all play together. I think what happens in myeloma is when you can build a community, and again, I tell you, it's small, so it's easier to get your arms around it, but when you build that kind of a community, and we've all been together for a long time as family, and you have a team like ours that has raised the money, over $300 million, that we've given to the scientific community. We developed the models, so we developed the tissue bank, we developed our own clinical network, we worked with the Broad and TGen to sequence our genome, we paid $40 million for COMPASS, and we don't just fund it, we do it. I mean, our whole team does all of this work, and then we invite the myeloma community in to work with us.
Well, I talk about physician scientists all the time, but I think you're a new category. I think you're the patient scientist.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks, Kathy.
Thanks,
everybody.